Hey folks, I'm Mike. Do you hate ads? I hate ads. You know what I like? Patreon.com/Inkdependence. It keeps this blog ad-free. Hello folks and welcome to inkdependence.com. I am Mike and this is Herbin's Lierre Sauvage, which is wild ivy, and it is a beautiful green. It comes in lots of bottle sizes and cartridges and all that kind of jazz. This one happens to be the 10 ml bottles. It is a wee little thing, and I've been using it actually kind of a lot. You can't see perhaps how much is left in here, but it's about, I don't know, it's under half anyway, and that's just from filling it up in a couple of pens here a few times. I've actually been using it for quite a while, but since like January, I guess, is when I started using this guy. In any case, if I was participating in the empty ink bottle challenge, which I didn't because, I don't know, I figured I probably wouldn't win. Maybe if I empty one, I'll retroactively join. I would probably be doing this one. 10 mils is pretty easy to run through, but these little bottles don't go for much, so these are a great way to try out some inks, and the bottle is actually pretty functional for filling up pens. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the writing sample here. It is there. Let me zoom in a skosh. There. Okay, so this is Herbin's Lierre Sauvage, and I had it in two pens, as you can see here. I was using it in these two. This one is a Lamy Aero, the new, or sorry, Ion rather. What am I talking about? The Lamy Ion, which is a new pen from Lamy. I did a video on how to fix the rattle in the cap a little while ago. Still working, and I've had it in this one not super long, only like a little while, because I wanted to try it out in a different nib. Lamy nibs tend to run a little bit dry for me, and so as you can see in the writing sample here, it's maybe not as obvious as it will be in the blog with static images. You tend to see that better there, but it's a little bit lighter and a little bit broader here because this is a medium nib and it runs a little bit on the dry side. This pen, on the other hand, is a faber-castell Ondoro Oak, and it is a great pen. The cap seal on this one is not the best. That's just kind of a problem with these Ondoros. But this ink has never had any startup problems. It has been great the whole time. And this fine nib is a little bit on the wet side, and so it puts down a finer and also darker line, which is very nice. And I've been using it in this pen since, I don't know, since like January. I think I filled it up at like Philly or something like that. So very cool pen, very cool ink to go in it. I love the oak with the ivy. Makes me think of like oak leaves or something, I suppose, even though it probably ought not to. All right, so this is the regular Rhodia paper that I tend to use because it's widely available, and it's pretty darn good stuff. You're not going to see any kind of show through or bleed through on this guy. This is the 80 grams per square meter, and as I say here, the flow is very nice and not nearly as thin as most Herbins. I don't use a lot of Herbin inks because a lot of them are very thin, they're very pale, they're undersaturated, and that is not my jam. You know, I like a thick, dark ink, and this one is great. As you can see here in the swatch, it is kind of lighter out toward the edges, and you will see a little bit of shading, I suppose, depending on your paper and that sort of thing, but not much, if any. But not much at all, and so I like this ink quite a lot. It's becoming one of my favorite greens, actually, so good job, Herbin, on that one. As far as qualities go, there is no sheen on this one at all. There is barely any shading, pretty much just a little bit of saturation. 20-pound paper, it does do a little bit of bleeding. Not a whole lot, though. Here's the 20-pound sample. As you can see, it's right here. I've got a couple other ones coming up here soon, but you see a little bit of, maybe a little bit of spread here, but not much. It's doing pretty well. And then on the back, you can definitely see that there is some bleed. It's not that bad. Let me put it on just a flat surface. Hey guys, it's not actually that bad. It looks a little bit terrible on this camera to me, but it's not terrible. It's fine. But if you are using it on this kind of bad office paper, expect a little bit of bleed and show through, that kind of thing, but not much at all. All right. And of course, this is like bottom tier paper, so that's to be expected. On some other papers, let's go ahead and look at it here on a Inky Fingers currently inked notebook. This is wheat straw paper, and this was being distributed by my buddy Matt Armstrong, The Pen Habit. You can go there and check it out, see if he has any left. But since he has retired, what's left is what's left. So here you can see I actually inked this one up on 111 as I remember it, and this one just like, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. And it is quite a bit darker on on this side with the fresh ink and all this kind of stuff. But it looks pretty good. It's actually soaked in here pretty well. Now, it will look entirely different when we switch over to Tomoe River. Let's go ahead and do that, and I'll keep this here just for comparison's sake. This is an ink journal, the Tomoe ink journal, and these are great. They help me keep my stuff straight. Otherwise, there's no hope for that. So here it is in the ion, and it actually is quite light here. And here, on a whole different page from months ago, it is from the Andorro. You can see it's much darker here. It actually doesn't soak into the page, I think, on this Tomoe River, and that's why it's very light. Let's have these here for comparison's sake. And you can see it's a much sort of more limey green, which is a bit odd, but that's what happens when you use different papers with different inks. So keep that in mind whenever you're using an ink. If you don't love the color or something, try it on a different paper. See how that goes. All right, let's go ahead and apply some water to this page. Get on some words here as well as some of that action. All right, good. You can see a little bit of it coming up, and I don't have much hopes for this in terms of water resistance at all. Wild ivy apparently does not resist water, so at least that's my guess. Let's see how it turns out. And that seems like long enough. Wipe this up. Dab, dab, dab. Actually, that's much better than I thought it was going to be. Quite a lot of it did come out, but not that much, actually. It's still readable, which is actually kind of a surprise. And the reason I think it's kind of a surprise is because of the chromatography. As you'll see here in just a sec, almost none of it sticks around where I wrote it or where I drew it on the page. So the fact that you can actually read this is pretty impressive to me. So hold on just a sec and watch this chromatography, and we'll talk about it. All right, so here is the chromatography as it ended up. And this is where the line started. You can see a little bit of like a gray area right here. That is where the original line was, of course, and then all the green kind of moved up the page. So the fact that you end up having this much green stick around on the page here is kind of surprising. So, you know, no one test will define everything, I guess, is what we learned here. All right, let's take a look at a whole bunch of color samples because I love green, and so I have a lot of green inks. And several of them actually are very close to this one because this is the kind of green that I'm into. All right, so here we have the Lierre Sauvage. Here we have Nuller's Verdum Green. And here we have Monteverde Aeronite, I suppose. I haven't used Aeronite yet. I've got a little bottle of it to go. This one I've had for not very long. Actually, I just got this off the PIF table. I'm looking forward to Verdum Green. But as far as those two go, I think Aeronite is closer, but it's much brighter. It's more gemstone looking, which I think is on purpose, and I'm looking forward to that one too. Here is Caran d'Ache Vibrant Green. Caran d'Ache inks are... I think I've liked most of the ones I've tried, but the price premium on those things keeps them out of a lot of people's hands, and that's kind of too bad. Then here we have Mont Blanc Irish Green, which I'll need to be reviewing fairly soon. I got this from a friend of mine, and I'm going through that sample vial pretty quick, so I'm gonna have to use that one pretty soon. But as you can see, these three are all kind of close. Vibrant Green is a bit darker, I think, than the other two. A little more light on here, because why not? But I think they're all looking pretty darn nice and in the same color family. And this Irish Green is actually very close to Lierre Sauvage. I think that this one is more steady in its color palette, and this one tends to get a bit darker, but I think both are pretty close. So if you don't want to shell out for Mont Blanc Irish Green, Lierre Sauvage is not a bad substitute. Here we have a Robert Oster. In fact, let's do two Robert Osters because Robert Oster has a lot of blues and greens, and he does really well in those areas. Here we have Evergreen and Emerald. Neither of them are particularly close. Well, I don't know. Evergreen, I suppose, is closer than Emerald. Emerald's got too much green and too much blue going on, as it ought to, I think. But Robert Oster Evergreen is fairly close, but you're going to get some sheen on that one and more shading because it's less saturated by a bit. Well, not less, but differently, I suppose we should say. All right. Here we go. Last two. Platinum Mix-Free Leaf Green. Not enough people use Platinum Mix-Free inks. Those things are great, but they are, like the Caran d'Ache, fairly expensive. And then lastly here, the Diamine Music Collection is Beethoven, which is a far darker green, I think, than the other two. Get some shine off of that one. Much more saturated, darker than the other two, but Platinum Mix-Free Leaf Green is pretty close. It's a little bit brighter, I think. But in this sort of price family, I think that this Lierre Sauvage does a really good job. And I'm a big fan, actually, of this ink. So you've heard it here first. I actually like a G. Herbin ink, which is not terribly common. All right, so this has been G. Herbin's Lierre Sauvage. I'm tired of saying Lierre Sauvage. It is hard on my my bad American accent here. But there you go. And you can find this at any place that sells these guys. I don't actually remember where I got this. It was probably Anderson Pens, since I'm pretty sure I picked it up at the Philly Pen Show. But you can find them there. You can find them at Jet Pens. You can find them all over the place in many different forms. Check out this ink, and I will see y'all later. Hey, thanks for becoming a patron. If you haven't become a patron yet, please think about it. Throwing a buck or two my way is always helpful in getting new inks and all this kind of stuff to show off on the blog. And since it's summer, more blogs are coming your way. I will see y'all on Friday live casts and all that sort of jazz. So until then, peace out. This is G. Herbin's Lierre. Oh, I forgot how to say it.